I'm currently sat here with a coffee, 6 a.m. in the morning on Friday. By the time a lot of you lovely lot will be listening to this, you will be well into your working day. But I've only had about bloody 4 hours sleep, first of all, because I woke up early this morning and thought, do you know what, Jason, just get up. The last few days have been so challenging, I can't even tell you. So I've been back in London sorting out my family home, which the last time I lived in, I was 18, and we had to go through a mountain of my dad's stuff. So my dad, very sadly, passed away unexpectedly last October. And I know some of you who've been listening to the podcast for a while will have heard about that. But it was out of the blue. One day, he was very unwell. Well, we didn't know how unwell he was. He had complained of a bad back, and turned out that he had an infection that was literally eating his back muscle. And to cut a long story short, it was like an absolute emotional roller coaster. 1 minute, we thought he might make a recovery. The next moment, we're being called out in the middle of the night, being told by the doctor, you know, this is time to say your final goodbyes, to then having another turning point to then be back in exactly the same position. So he passed away in October, and to say his passing came at a bad time is probably the absolute understatement of the century, because as a family, we'd had a really bad last few years, because essentially one day my brother, who I have to say has an absolute heart of gold, he's the kindest, nicest, most wholehearted person I think I've ever met in my life. And one day his ex-wife took his children, went and effectively made a whole raft of false allegations against my brother, which was just absolutely horrible. And then we've spent years trying to prove his innocence and also try and get the children back. And I have to say that took such a big toll on my dad, that fight. His health effectively started deteriorating from that moment onwards, which is hardly surprising because he was just living and breathing this absolute nightmare every single day. So when my dad did pass away, it came at a really bad time, because he was doing so much, firstly, to support my brother, and my brother actually lived with him as well. So when we went back to London, the house was very much almost like the day he'd passed away. Nothing had really changed. So we went down there, and it was hard because, first of all, we're going through his possessions, and it's a very sad thing. I think it kind of opens back up the Pandora's box of the early days grief, and, you know, even deciding whether to throw things out. I think I'm slightly better than my brother, I will say, when it comes to not being someone who just wants to keep every family heirloom. I have to say I've changed a lot, because in my 20s, soul sink, I, was very bad when it came to probably keeping things, hoarding things. But these days I'm much better than that. And I wouldn't say I'm perfect, because I have spent, since leaving work and having this period off, several weeks now basically going through every cupboard in my house, every drawer, sorting it out, reorganizing the house, moving the furniture around, because in this new chapter of my life, I've really wanted to kind of shake the energy up and get organised, and also set myself up for how I want to move forward. And even when it came to my office at home, which is why I record actually all the Soul Sync episodes, it wasn't really, in my eyes, fit for, working full time from, or doing stuff that's actually running a business from home, which I want to do in due course when I get back to working. Because as you know, at the moment, the only thing but mediumship, the Soul Sync, is kind of my main things that are filling up my time at the moment, and I'm loving that. But it's been a hard few days, I have to say. We had basically this angel arrive from God, it felt like, in a sense that my mum was at the rubbish dump doing one of many, many rubbish dump runs. And in the very first one, as she was putting some of my dad's clothes into one of those charity boxes, she noticed there was a man sort of taking them out as she was putting them in almost. And that man turned out to be interested in doing house clearance, which then meant that, thank God, because it was even 4 loads of his van. There's one thing about my dad. His house is essentially where you would want to be if there was a pandemic or if a zombie apocalypse arrived tomorrow. That is where I would want to be, because he used to be very good at buying things on bulk, because I can't even believe how many cans of baked beans there were, to be quite frank, in London, and how many hand soaps there was and stuff like that. But my dad just had such a big heart. He always wanted to make sure that the fridge was full, everything was there, everything was provided. And although we wouldn't always see eye to eye, because my dad and I couldn't be more different if you tried. He used to struggle quite a lot and with his mental health and with talking about things and talking about his emotions. I think part of that was because he was of a certain generation, but that to one side, I've actually learned a lot more about him and about his past and some of the reasons why he was as he was, actually, since he's gone to the spirit world, because we've had a number of kind of exchanges and dialogues through mediums, because obviously when you are a medium, you tend to do a lot of readings and have a lot of readings. So, which is one of the actual main reasons of always what has pulled me back to mediumship so much and to go on courses and to go in those kind of environments, is it's the only time really where I tend to get readings. So we got back late last night, and to say I was a stinky mess, a sweaty, stinky, sunburnt mess is an understatement. So we loaded up the van, and I have to say, when we got back to where I live in Bristol, in the southwest, and we opened up the van door, everything had absolutely moved around. And, almost my brother's face when I opened that van door was just, if I could have took a picture, it would have been very funny. So, the experience of just going to London and going through all my dad's possessions even, has made me think differently about the things we accumulate around us, because I think we definitely live in a very materialistic society now, where we're always seeking, a lot of the time, and I think a lot of society are, more in the way of possessions, more in the way of material goods. And, when push comes to shove, you really do take none of this with you. It was so tricky as well, going through cupboards and drawers and boxes and finding my dad's things. And some of the things that really touched me was, although we didn't always see eye to eye, and I love my dad implicitly because he brought me up from a very young age, and me and my brother are, well, you could say we're stepbrothers, but he is my brother. And my dad took me and my mum in, it probably was a situation of taking us in to some extent, because when my mum had me and got home to my actual biological dad, all her stuff was waiting on the doorstep. And my dad always treated me and my brother exactly the same. And my brother is kind of exactly like my dad in terms of looks and temperament, and I'm much more like my mum's. But when I was going through some of the drawers and seeing the fact that he'd kept so many cards that I got for him and so many photos he had of me, and he had a photo of me in his wallet, it actually, just really, really touched my heart. And I know my brother found it very difficult as well, going through things. First of all, I must say, it feels like an invasion of his privacy as well, going through all of his drawers, because my dad was an absolutely tremendously private person. And I have to say, there was a lot of things I didn't even know about my dad until such point as his funeral, because he was a very kind of private person. And I have to say, there was even one drawer I went through where I found myself absolutely wanting to burst out in tears. And it's the sentimental things, really, more than anything, that was the items I wanted to keep. But I kind of felt, since I've got back, I've spent the last few weeks since leaving my business, effectively, like I said, clearing out my house, to have now brought back bags of stuff of my dad's back from London, and including so many pairs of trainers, because me and my dad were very similar size feet. And I just thought to myself, I can't chuck out all of these cans of baked beans and then find myself going to Sainsbury's or to the grocery store to then go and buy some. So it's been a roller coaster, but I thought, do you know what? I'm going to come on this morning and record an episode because I want to get a bit better at being a bit more, what's the word I want to use? Consistent when it comes to releasing these episodes, because I really feel of service to you and to the spirit world. And during this period, this transition period of mine at the moment, I've almost said to the spirit world that, do you know what? If you want me to be doing more mediumship and be doing this closer to full time, then you have a window of opportunity, because once it gets to a month in the not too distant future, I'm going to have to get back to thinking about what am I going to do to actually make an income full time. But in other news, my mediumship, I've been doing a lot of readings in the last few weeks off the back of the buzz from doing the platform mediumship in Amsterdam. And I have to say, the vividness of my clairvoyance compared to that of such time as when I was back working is like night and day. And I'm really starting to get into a groove where I'm just relaxing more into my mediumship and just really enjoying the creative process of just embracing, myself, not conforming myself to boxes, but actually taking a great deal of pride and inspiration of breaking out of boxes, to be quite frank. And I mentioned this in an episode with Colin Bates the other day, in the fact that I used to do magic and I was very, very, very good at magic. I'm actually just looking at, in front of me in my office now, a newspaper cut out from when I must have been 16, which is a local newspaper, which says, "Tricks are a treat. A talented young magician is celebrating after entertaining his 1,000th customer." Effectively, when I used to do table magic in restaurants, which would then lead me to get bookings for hotels, which would then lead me to get bookings for weddings. But when I was about 14, 15, I was so into performing magic, so much so that when I left my secondary school, which was an awful all-boys school in Kent, and it was actually in the bottom three secondary schools. I didn't find that out until years later, because it was actually bulldozed down a couple of years after I left it. And I could assure you, no one was chaining themselves to the gates of that school to try and save it. But it was a tough school. And to be quite frank, I just couldn't wait to get out of there. So I used to perform magic around that time. And in the last couple of weeks, I've really been wanting to look different ways to present mediumship that allows not just the magic of the spirit to come through, but allow the magic of the human potential to come through as well. And I'm working on something at the moment which kind of combines the two worlds of mediumship and of the magic of the human consciousness and the human ability. You can tell I'm sort of skirting around this at the moment because I don't want to say too much about it, but I've been developing something that has really got me excited, which I think is going to bring these two worlds very much together and allow me to present to an audience the real magic of our potential as souls of unlimited potential. So that's got me very excited, and I've been working on that over the last couple of weeks. And yeah, so it's just been a roller coaster ride, and I wanted to come on this morning. So I thought, do you know what? If I don't get up right now and record this little episode for you with a little update, it's just not going to happen. But I will be putting out an episode tomorrow, Saturday, if you're listening to this today, that is. And I've got some really, really exciting guests on over the next few weeks. I did want to say, my darlings, as well, that for the first time in a long time, I've got a pretty open diary. So if you know someone that might have an interesting story, they might want to get a message out there about spirituality and on the Soul Sync, as you know, we talk about topics far and wide, and it might even be yourself. You might feel that you have a message you want to share. You might have been through certain experience experiences that you feel that by talking about them, they could help other people. And the Soul Sync now is listened to all across the world, and it never fails to amaze me, the stories that I come across. And why do I do this podcast? I'll tell you, for a couple of reasons. Firstly, I absolutely love it. Secondly, it really feels like this is where I am of service, not just to the spirit world, but also to you, the lovely listener, and also to myself, because by virtue of doing this, I learn a lot too. But what's really important to me is giving people a platform to share their story. And, I feel it's by sharing our stories and kind of talking through how it is that we've got to where we are, that's what allows other people to it helps other people on their journey. So if you have got a story or you would be potentially interested in coming on the Soul Sync, then I would encourage you to drop me a line. My email address is in the show notes, and it'd be lovely to have a chat with you. So today I am about to go over to my brother's to start the part 2 of the unloading of the van. Loading it up was like a jigsaw puzzle. Unloading it is going to be interesting, considering it's all moved around. And then I need to get the van back by 5 o'clock. But it's kind of been all stations go over the last week, but not just the last week, the last few weeks. So, I'm almost sort of thinking to myself, how on earth am I going to fit a full-time job back in to my life? Because I've got kind of used to being off, but it's the first time I've had more than 10 days off since I must have been, I can't even remember, 19, 20. So I'm starting to feel recharged. I'm starting to feel energized, and I'm starting to get that little bit of a tiny itch now that, the time is approaching to start thinking about what next. So, I've just been moving through such a major period of transition where I'm no longer living in quite, the same world it felt like that I was months ago. So, I just need to continue to create space to really work out what my next chapter looks like. And I know very wholeheartedly that's my mediumship, but also my mediumship alongside helping people, empowering people to live their full potential, helping people to address, identify, and move past the limiting beliefs that hold you back in your life. So, lastly, what's been exciting me most about my mediumship recently, I would say it very much is the platform and demonstrating mediumship in front of audiences and larger groups of people, which has been what's driving what I was just telling you about in terms of my magic and bringing that into my mediumship. Obviously, I'm always trying to become the best channel that I can possibly be to the spirit world. But, there's just something about the way I'm relaxing into readings now, and I'm starting to feel like Rocky. Yes. So, that's what I want to do. So I would also say as well, I'm asking for a lot of help today on this particular episode. But if you do happen to know of any venues that might be interested in me coming along, doing some mediumship, I'd be also very interested in learning about that as well. So I just thought I'd drop you a little note before the weekend gets going, and I'll leave you today on a lovely piece of music. I've just said a lovely piece of music. I'll leave you on a lovely piece of music. I haven't even picked the piece of music yet, but here is a lovely piece of music. 5 minutes later. Okay, I've picked it now. This is a lovely song called Love by Noah Bentor.